Well, welcome to the 700 Club. President Trump is continuing negotiations with Iran. At the same time, he's making plans for war.
The U.S. Special Envoy arrives in Jerusalem today. He's expected to meet with the Iranian leaders later this week. CBN Middle East correspondent Julie Stahl has more.
President Trump is urging Iran to abandon its nuclear program and make a deal.
I'd like to see a deal negotiated. I don't know that that's going to happen. Right now, we're talking to them. We're talking to Iran, and if we could work something out, that'd be great. And if we can't, probably bad things would happen.
According to Iranian media, the country's president has ordered the start of talks. Trump's special envoy Steve Witkoff is due in Israel on Tuesday for talks with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu before a potential meeting with the Iranian foreign minister later in the week. In an address to the Knesset, Netanyahu said there are challenges ahead of Israel.
More testing awaits us, but we're vigilant and prepared for any development. We're monitoring the situation and are ready for any scenario. Anyone who attacks us will face unbearable consequences as far as he is concerned.
Despite the talk of negotiations, the U.S. and Israel are preparing for war. On Sunday, Israeli naval vessels and a U.S. Navy destroyer held a joint exercise in the Red Sea arena. In Gaza, Israel reopened the Rafah crossing with Egypt on Tuesday, allowing people to cross but not any goods. The Times of Israel published a decade-old photo showing a Gaza doctor wearing a Hamas uniform. Israeli news, Kan, reported that Hamas's leadership sent a secret document to the organization's officials in Gaza ahead of the installation of a new government. It revealed how Hamas plans to continue ruling and managing the Gaza Strip, despite Trump's plan, which calls for the complete disarming and dismantling of Hamas. Avi Abelo says both Iran and its proxy Hamas are employing an ancient Islamic tactic to buy time and rebuild their strength.
A hudna is a pause saying, okay, we can't win now. We'll make a temporary peace deal so that when our enemies are either weak or they don't see it coming and we're strong again, we will then attack again to destroy our enemies. That is exactly what Muhammad did back in 628.
He says the West needs to understand that the only way to deal with jihadi ideology is to defeat it.
This is a society that's at war to not only destroy Israel, but jihad is about taking over the world in the name of Islam. It's about first going after the Saturday people, that's the Jews, then going after the Sunday people, that's the Christians, and they are in the process of doing this across Europe, Australia, Canada. They're in the process of doing this in America. Even without raising a sword.
Julie Stahl, CBN News, Jerusalem.
We have to keep in mind what Islamic ideology, what Sharia law allows Muslims to do. First and foremost, it allows them to lie to infidels. In fact, it's encouraged in jihad that you must disguise what you're doing, and it's perfectly legal under Sharia law to lie and lie repeatedly. The other thing is this hudna, the let's take a pause. If we can't win right now, let's take a pause until we're strong enough where we can win. Now, in the negotiations right now with Iran, are both sides delaying until there's enough strength to have overwhelming force? I think Iran's just trying to buy time so they can build more ballistic missiles and fully develop an atomic weapon. But let's look at what Hamas has done to lie to infidels. If I can get the picture of that doctor. Here is the doctor in his doctor robes as he's one of the first ones to declare as supposed head of the hospital in Gaza. He wrote 2 New York Times op-ed pieces where he claimed Israel was committing genocide, and he had proof. Now go back to that picture again. Here is him 10 years ago, and he's in a colonel's uniform for Hamas. He is part of their military structure. The entire Gaza Ministry of Health is a propaganda arm of Hamas. They're terrorists, and here he is in this doctor's robe, supposedly looking like he's a medical professional trying to care for injured people. He's not. He's trying to tear down the Jewish state. He's trying to attack Israel. And it's amazing to me that the New York Times would participate in that. It's also amazing to me that our culture, it seems like all of Europe and all of the United States has bought into this incredible lie that Israel committed genocide in Gaza. They did no such thing. It was Hamas calling for genocide in Israel. That was the motivation behind the October 7th attack. And these lies get repeated again and again and again. And here's a colonel in the Hamas military getting space in one of the premier publications of the world, the New York Times, not just once, but twice, and using that term genocide and accusing the IDF of genocide in Gaza. The truth has been stood on its head, but we're here to tell you the real truth, that these are lies, and incredible lies, being repeated, and the so-called gatekeepers of truth, the newspapers of record, are allowing it to continue with no correction. This goes along with the photographs of supposedly starving Gazan children that weren't starving at all. They had a medical condition, and it was all set up, or the staged photographs of people clamoring for food with empty pans in their hands. All of these images, these stories have gone around the world. As believers in the truth of the Bible, we need to stand up to it and call it for what it is. These are lies. And the Islamic ideology, this radical Islamic death cult, these militant terrorists that want destruction, they seem to worship death. We need to confront it boldly and continuously until it is eradicated from the planet. In other news, New York City reports a shocking rise in anti-Semitic attacks last month. Gary Lane has that story and more from the CBN Newsroom. Gary?
Gordon, according to a press release from the New York City Police Department, anti-Jewish hate crimes increased by 182%. Which accounted for more than half of all the hate crime incidents in January. The release reports 31 hate crimes against Jews last month, as compared to 11 in January 2025. The Anti-Defamation League's Scott Richmond said the dramatic rise is, quote, staggering. He told Jewish News Syndicate, from swastikas at a playground in Borough Park to a car ramming at Chabad headquarters in Crown Heights. The Jewish community in New York City is very much on edge. He also urged the city's new mayor, Zohran Mamdani, who is a Muslim, to quickly appoint the next director of the mayor's office to combat anti-Semitism. The partial government shutdown is now in its fourth day. Lawmakers in Washington remain deadlocked over funding for the Department of Homeland Security and reforms in immigration enforcement. Charlene Aaron has the story.
Workers with the Federal Aviation Administration are on furlough, and 14,000 air traffic controllers will work without pay as the shutdown continues. This message is on the Department of Health and Human Services website. Due to the government shutdown, information on this website may not be up to date. As Americans begin filing their taxes, the IRS now only able to process returns through this Saturday. The president hopeful an agreement can be made.
I think they're pretty close to a resolution. You know, we were at 5.6% GDP, and we lost 1.5 points because of the 42-day shutdown.
The impasse is centered around ICE operations following the tragic shooting deaths of Alex Preddy and Renee Good by agents in Minneapolis. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem saying ICE agents will now be required to wear body cameras. We will rapidly acquire and deploy body cameras to DHS law enforcement across the country, Noem posted on X. Lawmakers are deadlocked over demands for agency reform. The budget bill only funds DHS for 2 weeks, giving Congress time to debate changes in ICE tactics and strategy. Speaker Johnson needs nearly every GOP vote in the House to pass, but some are opposed to talk of reform. The House is holding a procedural vote today to move the bill forward and potentially end the shutdown. Charlene Aaron, CBN News.
There's a fight on Capitol Hill to preserve funding for one of the most effective public health programs in history. Since 2023, the U.S.-led AIDS relief effort, known as PEPFAR, has saved more than 26 million lives. CBN's Michelle London spoke with Senator Susan Collins about efforts to continue that program.
Last year, we had the great privilege of serving over 121,000 unique individuals, bringing hope, breaking despair, and focused on building Africa.
It's been Living Hope's mission on the continent for 25 years. In celebration of the milestone, Executive Director Victor Thomas credits much of the organization's success to PEPFAR.
Where both helped us in the prevention side of things as well as treatment, and we were able to do incredible work amongst youth and teens on the prevention side, as well as treatment and testing in clinics.
Since receiving the first round of funding back in 2004, Thomas says the program has been highly successful from the start.
From year one in our healthcare facility, we saw 95% of people die from the disease. But come year two, with ARVs and PEPFAR's partnership, we saw 95% of people thrive and live healthy lives.
Thomas says the fight continues in underserved areas along the Eastern Cape province. He notes HIV/AIDS cases there are increasing, especially among teenagers. Republican Senator Susan Collins continues to fight for keeping PEPFAR aid flowing to Living Hope and other foreign agencies. Last year, she opposed cuts of $400 million.
The funding for PEPFAR is slightly lower than last year, but much higher than what the president's budget proposed.
Collins chairs the Senate Appropriations Committee, which is currently considering a spending bill that would invest in life-saving global health programs, including PEPFAR, Gavi, and maternal and child health agencies.
There are some exciting developments. For example, there is a vaccine that is being developed that would replace the need for daily medication, and that could help make it more practical for a country in Africa, for example, that lacks resources to take over the program.
As vaccine breakthroughs continue, so does the plan for the U.S. to dwindle down and eventually phase out direct funding to many countries. There's supposed to be a significant reduction by 2028. Do you think that's enough time?
We're not there yet. So I think that this has to be on a case-by-case basis, dependent on the resources, the infrastructure, and new methods of treatment.
The America First Global Health Strategy, released in September, aims to transition these countries to total self-reliance by 2030. Collins says while it is an aspirational goal, it's going to take outreach, education, and U.S. healthcare providers being there on the ground, assisting local staffers.
To me, this is carrying out what Jesus would want done. It is taking care of the least of us.
Michelle London, CBN News.
Gordon, self-reliance is certainly a praiseworthy goal, but it's also important not to forget charity, compassion, and generosity.
Oh, well said, Gary. The AIDS epidemic is clearly live and kicking in particularly South Africa. And if their government is not going to take the initiative to bring up the slack here and provide that, if HIV is on the rise in teenagers there, just imagine the devastation that's going to happen to that generation and to future generations. But for us in America, we can't think, well, you know, all right, well, let them have their problem. It's their problem. Let them deal with it. AIDS doesn't know national boundaries. It absolutely spreads. And if we allow it on our watch to get back to epidemic proportions, well, then it's going to spill over into our population too. So it's in our own self-interest to provide for prevention and provide for treatment for those who are infected, and effective education as to how this disease is transmitted. And if you have it, what are your obligations now? These are all very important to stem the spread of that horrible disease. Let's do our part and realize in doing our part for others, as the Bible says, we're also helping ourselves.